Hello, everyone. On this podcast episode, I'm going to continue where I left off, you know, talking about science and gravity. In this episode, I'm going to explain gravity a bit more using our planet Earth, you know. So, we think gravity is a force in and of itself, right? Scientists believe gravity is some sort of force. But the truth is, gravity isn't a force. Gravity is just energy going from places of high concentration to a place of low concentration. And energy always goes from places of high concentration to low concentration. That's how energy works. It's always, it always flows from high concentration places to low concentration places. Just like water, If you fill a bathtub with water, right, and you plug up the drain, there'll be a high concentration of water on in the bathtub. When you pull the drain, do you know why the water goes down the drain? Because there's a low concentration of water down the drain. The drain has no water, only air. So water flows into the drain because there's a place for it to flow into. And replacing that water is what? Air. As the water goes down, air takes its place. As the water comes up, it pushes air out. That's how gravity works as well. But gravity works in a different manner. Instead of pulling water down, right? Gravity pulls energy into itself. Gravity is the process of space pulling into the center of the earth. Space itself is not empty. Space is filled with energy. So visualize space as a massive whirlpool of water, a massive ocean of water, a massive sea of water. The center of the earth there's a massive drain at the center of the earth. There's a massive hole at the center of the earth. So what do you think will happen? All that energy will will flow into the center of the earth from all directions. And the energies within space are so tiny that they can flow directly through matter. They can flow through most of the rocks within Earth. Although a rock looks hard and dense, although these rocks, although the Earth looks hard and dense, it's only dense from our point of view. The particles within space, the microscopic particles within space, are so tiny, they can flow right through what? They can flow right through the Earth. Because they can flow right through the earth unimpeded. They're always pulling us towards the earth. They're constantly pulling us towards the earth because the earth and the planet sits in space. The whole planet is sitting inside a massive body of water. If the space is water, earth is sitting inside a massive body of water, right? That's why, the earth is always spinning because it's sitting inside a massive body of water, right? And that body of water is spinning it's creating, at the center of the earth, there's a massive vacuum. That massive vacuum is creating a whirlpool. And that whirlpool is spinning the planets because the energy around that whirlpool, the energy is flowing into the planet, the center of the earth, creating a massive whirlpool. And that whirlpool is why the planet keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. The earth spins in place. That's why we have day and night. Is because the earth is constantly spinning in place. The earth is spinning in place because there's a drain, a vacuum at the very center of the earth that's pulling space towards it. All the space around the earth is being pulled towards the very middle of the earth, the very center of the earth, creating a whirlpool of energy. We can't see that whirlpool because we don't see, these microscopic particles are so tiny that, it's very hard for us to see with our naked eye. but they exist and they're filled with mass. These particles exist and they're filled with mass. And these particles are constantly being pulled, forced into the center of the earth. And that's what gravity is. When these particles are pushing, are being pulled into the center of the earth, guess what? Since we're inside this, this whirlpool of water, we'll be pulled along with it. Since this energy is being pulled towards the earth, the center of the earth, we humans are also what? Situated inside that whirlpool of water. So we'll also be pulled towards that center. For just like a ship, when a whirlpool appears inside an ocean, right? The ship will be pulled, following the whirlpool, following the circle, will slowly be pulled into that vortex, into that vacuum at the center. That's exactly how gravity works. We're always being pulled towards the center of the earth. And the thing that's pulling us isn't gravity. It is space itself. Space is being pulled towards the center of the earth. Because space is being pulled towards, the energy within space is being pulled towards the center of the earth, right? We get pulled along with it. We get dragged along with it. And like I mentioned before, the reason why the space is being pulled towards the center of the earth is because at the center of the earth is massless energy. The center of the earth converts mass, energy that has mass, into what? Massless energy. It converts it into heat. And that heat escapes the center of the earth. That's why the center of the earth is hot. The center of the earth is very, very hot, just like the sun, because that's where, the conversion happens. The nuclear conversion happens. So the energy all around us slowly gets pulled into the center of the earth, pulling us as well. Because when it gets pulled, we get pulled along with it. So we're always being dragged towards the center of the earth, not because some sort of gravity is pulling us, but because energy always goes from places of high concentration to places of low concentration. And the place with the lowest concentration of mass, right, is the very center of the earth. That very center, that middle point, has no mass at all, because it's filled with massless energy. Massless energy is heat. It is light. Light has no mass. And the center of the earth is filled with a lot of light. It's filled with a lot of heat. Because the center of the earth has no mass, right? All the mass around the earth will naturally flow towards it. Because it's the only place that's a vacuum. It's the only place on earth without mass. So gravity isn't a force that's pulling us. Space itself is the one that's pulling us down. We're being pulled down towards the center of the earth because there's a vacuum there. And around that vacuum will be a lot of mass. Just like, in a whirlpool of water, around that hole, there's a huge volume of water. There's a high concentration of water around, a drain. Where that hole is, around that very hole, around the eye of a storm, is a large volume of energy. And that's how the earth is. Around that, that center is a large volume of mass, a large volume of matter. And slowly but surely, all that matter will be converted to what? Massless energy. It will be converted to light. And the light would then what? When it's converted to light, the equal and opposite of gravity occurs. All that light, all that heat will escape the earth. It'll move outwards. So as mass contracts, Heat escapes. So the center of the earth converts mass into heat. And because the center of the earth is filled with a lot of heat and no mass, mass keeps getting, pulled into it. It creates a vacuum where mass keeps getting pulled into it. Energy with mass gets pulled into it, and massless energy gets pushed out. So it's like an endless vacuum, an endless nuclear reaction. And as time goes on, the more mass gets pulled in, if more mass gets pulled in than energy gets pulled out, the hole may get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the planet Earth turns into what? Another sun. So the planet Earth is a prototype sun, a small version of the sun we've seen, out there. At some point in time, the plasma within the center of the Earth will slowly expand until the whole Earth becomes a massive ball of plasma, just like the sun. A massive ball of, matterless, massless energy. Gravity isn't its own force. It is just, gravity is no different from, a tornado. You know how a tornado works, right? It pulls things towards it. That's what gravity is. When the wind gets pulled towards, the center of a tornado, right? When the wind gets pulled towards the center of the tornado, what happens? Buildings get pulled as well. People get pulled in as well. And that's what's happening at the center of the sun. And that's what's happening at the center of the earth. There's a massive tornado of energy at the center of the earth. And that energy, is, it's a massive tornado made out of space. Space itself, the tiny little particles in space is being pulled into the center of the earth, creating what? Creating our planet. Our planet was formed because of space contracting on itself. Asteroids will flow towards Earth because space itself is flowing towards Earth. The energy within space that we can't see is flowing towards the Earth constantly. And it can pass through asteroids. It can pass through all the hard particles on Earth because they're smaller than the particles on Earth. They're tinier than iron, so they can pass through iron. They're tinier than, the Earth itself, so they can pass through most of the particles on Earth. For example, helium. Do you know scientists have discovered that when helium is a very small particle. Helium is a very small particle, and it also has a low amount of mass, right? Helium has a very low amount of mass. That's why helium gets pushed out of, the center of the earth. Since helium has less mass than, for example, iron, helium floats up while iron floats down. Just like heat floats up and humans float down. We get pulled down. Things with matter gets pulled, things with mass get pulled down. Things without mass get pushed out. So helium, these gases that have less mass get pushed out of the earth. They go towards places with less concentration of what? Massless energy. They're going towards space. Because space is composed of a lot of mass, but it doesn't have that much massless energy. The energy in space is filled with mass. Because it's filled with mass, it doesn't have that much massless energy. So particles that have little mass get pushed out. They flow towards places with less mass because the center of the earth is filled with massless energy. Because it's filled with massless energy, all particles that have no mass or little mass get pushed out, while particles that have a lot of mass get pulled in. And that's what gravity is. As long as you have mass, you'll be pulled into the center of the earth. Because at the center of the earth, there's no mass there. At the very, very center, there's no mass. Because there's no mass, it forms a massive vacuum. It forms a massive whirlpool of energy. And that whirlpool of energy, it's like a massive tornado. A massive tornado that pulls every object around the earth towards its center. And that massive tornado is what we call gravity. But, gravity is not a force in and of itself. It's just heat moving from places of high concentration to low concentration. It's just energy moving from places of high concentration to low concentration. Just like water goes down the drain. The concentration of water in your bathtub is so high that the moment you open a hole at the bottom of your bathtub, all the water goes down it because there's a hole there. There's low concentration of water down the drain. So all the water that's concentrated in your bathtub will flow down the drain. There's low concentration of matter, of mass at the center of our planet. There's a low concentration of mass at the center of our planet. So all the mass around us will flow towards the center of our planet. So gravity isn't really a force that's, that pulls things out. It's not a force in and of itself. It's just space contracting on itself. It's just a massive whirlpool. That's all it is. And it looks like a massive whirlpool, does it not? The planets revolve around the sun, just like a whirlpool, does it not? If you see the planets and you see the sun, you realize that they flow around the sun, just like, water flows towards a drain. So at the center of the sun, there's a drain there. There's a hole. There's a vacuum of massless energy right there. So water keeps flowing. All the mass, in the universe, all the mass around the sun will constantly flow into the sun, pulling every single planet towards the sun. It is the energy being pulled towards the sun that pulls us as well. Because everything in this world sits inside space. Space is like an ocean of water. So when that ocean water gets drained, we get pulled along with it. There's no anchor points. There's no anchor point in space. So there's no anchor point in space, when all the mass, all the energy filled mass in space gets pulled towards the center of the sun, we will also get pulled along with it. That's how energy works. Energy always flows from places of high concentration to low concentration. And that's how, gravity works as well. Gravity isn't a force in and of itself. It is just energy moving from high concentration places to low concentration places. That's all it is. It may be the same thing with, with magnets as well. But that's it for today's podcast episode. I may change, I don't like talking too much about science, not because I don't care about science, but I like to be varied with my podcast. I like to change things up. So hopefully, if I feel like I've fully explained everything about this concept, I'll move on to other subjects. But if I haven't, I'll create another episode talking about this. That's it for today's podcast episode. I'll see you guys later. I pray for everyone's good health and safety. Amen.